Sátántangó now. Okay, an infamous film, Tarr's most well-known yet plausibly most inaccessible film, over 7 hours in length. I've never watched it from start to finish, only in bits over like 2 days or so. This is probably the third time I've done it, though I did it in the one day. I took a break to attend the Palestine demonstration in Sydney on Sunday, 22nd of February 2026. I'm not going to be beaten down for not reading novels in one sitting, so don't get on my case for not watching fucking Sátántangó in one sitting. I, as a filmmaker, don't expect you to watch any 7-hour movie I direct in one sitting, and AOD isn't fussed if you don't watch his 4-hour feature, The Joys of Waving, in one sitting either. I do admire Sátántangó. I don't know if I adore Sátántangó. I feel as though its reputation has you projecting a certain brilliance onto it. At least initially, you think it can't just be a sham. There's so much going into this as a production, such a precise act of direction. It can't be just a fluke, just some waste of everyone's time. So I wonder how I'd feel if it was some unknown film I'd come across, and I can really imagine myself liking it a lot, but not feeling confident as to whether I could name it as outright brilliant. What has me assuming most that there is something seminal taking place in the runtime of Sátántangó is actually the quality of Tarr's other films, which I tend to get a lot more out of than I do Sátántangó. Sátántangó was the first Tarr film I saw. Once I saw Werkmeister, Harmonies, Tourenhorse, or even Damnation, even The Man from London, which is actually one of the earliest FOTDs uploaded to this channel, that was when I became fairly convinced that Sátántangó definitely was the work of an impressive auteur, if only by proxy of what I considered superior and much more punctual features, frankly. Sátántangó's reputation as a great paragon of cinema has me slightly confused. It is Tarr's enamoration with a rather ambitious novel, a 1985 text of the same name, authored by one Laszlo Krasznaorkai. Anyone who talks about how brilliant Sátántangó is surely must be giving the novel a significant credit for this assumed brilliance. Krasznaorkai has a co-screenwriting credit with Tarr, after all. I mean, with The Godfather, many people firstly will be eager to name Puzo a genius also, but also point out that the film's screenplays become inspired but separate entities from the original texts, and also arguably some have claimed do more with the film medium than the already impressive Puzo novels did with their own respective medium. No such discussions of the Sátántangó novel exist in the discourse around its film adaptation, and that is perhaps because this novel, unlike Puzo's Godfather, obviously, was written in Hungarian, and I do believe something gets lost in translation when reading literature translated from a language foreign to yourself, and so naturally we're less excited in the English-speaking world, say, reading something that was translated into English as opposed to written in English. Probably the most famous example of slow cinema, although it is a continuum which began, or it was initially prominently recognized in a Greek director, a real genius it should be said, named Theodoros Angelopoulos, who released some insurmountable features during the 70s. His 1980 film Alexander the Great, potentially one of his 3 or 4 best, has been discussed on this channel before. Obviously, Chantal Akerman's famous film 1080 Bruxelles from 1975, discussed on this channel prior actually, is an example of the slow cinema bracket, although it has at least as much in common with structural film, which has some fundamental things in common with slow cinema, there's no denying this, as it does with the long take dependent, choreographically fastidious and sparse on dialogue characteristics associated with the slow cinema directors. The same could be said of very great American director James Benning, actually. Sometimes Tarkovsky is put into this camp. I wouldn't go quite so far. Tarkovsky is clearly a major influence on probably all of the slow cinema directors, although his films are so reliant on dialogue and sometimes walls of text that it has me hitting pause on labeling him a slow cinema auteur. His films certainly are not as slow as those of Angelopoulos, Tarr, Simon Liang, or someone like Lab Diaz from the Philippines. Probably along with Angelopoulos, my favourite practitioner of this quite specific form. Then there's Wang Bing, that's a whole nother level of slow, and cinematic genius if you're willing to dive to that depth. Although again, lots of commonality of structural film as opposed to old school slow cinema, as in you're a fan of Tarx and Angelopoulos, much like James Benning's works, Wang Bing's are, with a bit of old Frederick Wiseman thrown in as well, definitely. Hershao Shen and Edward Yang are considered great practitioners of this form, both from Taiwan, as is the aforementioned very brilliant filmmaker Tsai Ming Liang, Pedro Costa, who is from Spain, Tarr's Hungarian peer, Mr. Georgi Feher, the German director Fred Kellerman, whose 1997 feature Frost, a highly powerful and daunting title, has been discussed on this channel before. Hirokazu Kurita from Japan, who is a very famous director now. Sharon Spartas from Lithuania. His 1997 feature The House has been discussed on FOTD before as well. Sokurov from Russia. Zhang Kejia in China. Many of the most exciting directors in the world from the 70s onward have explored this form, sometimes to magnificent emotive impact, and sometimes to clinical, outwardly formulaic and overly homage exercises in impressive international film critics who decide what is worthwhile cinema by what fits a recognized, agreed upon, and widely familiar scaffold. I admit I'd feel better if it was Werkmeister harmonies that everyone went all crazy and boasted about thinking was genius or whatever the hell. Although I certainly do admire lots of what is on display in Sátántangó. I'm very glad it exists. I like the idea of watching it like once a decade or so. How can you hate it? That's what it wants you to do. If you have contempt for it, you should acknowledge where it succeeds but accuse it of falling flat and of ultimately effectively wasting everyone's time. That's what would really piss Tarr off. He'd enjoy the idea that you wasted your time. That would make it lightly sadistically worth it for him. But to say that you enjoyed it to some extent, but it didn't quite bring you to climax, I'm telling you, that's what's going to really hurt that man's ego, really puncture the confident sense of self. Probably not. Agnes Granitsky was the only one he probably cared about getting off, and I hope that he got her off many times, as off as any woman has ever been off. Mr. Tarr passed away at the age of 70 on the 6th of January this year. He, like it or not, will be remembered forever as a director whose films would motivate some of the most convicted discussion in the 90s on. He defined, for better or for worse, slow cinema as in a more popular imagination for cinephiles more than any other director. And he worked very, very hard on these films. The struggle to compose such precise shots must not be taken for granted even by those who fell asleep before being able to appreciate more than two of them. Some films are very much loved or hated, and often one of the poles is more passionate than the other. Those who love Heaven's Gate are more passionate than those who hate it, who just dismiss it as dull or American and just move on, such as myself. Those who hate Warhol's Empire and other multi-hour, one-shot, one-take films spend more energy expressing their distaste than the usually babble that his adorers pen to impress their similarly cliquey peers. Oakeshott is the only one who can write a decent paragraph on Warhol, who is still alive anyway. But those who love Sátántangó do really, really love it, and even seem to ever so slightly worship it, and those who hate it think as little films should resemble it as possible, and are not convinced that such films are for anyone except those with a superiority complex and in need of some validation for it. I'll be very cranky if I find out that that cat wasn't okay at the end of the film, as Tarr claims. Tarr claims the cat was fine, it's okay, and it was like his cat, it still lived with him or whatever. But until then, I have no shame in saying that I'm jealous of him as a filmmaker. I mean, no more shame beyond the shame of wanting to be a filmmaker, instead of a doctor, engineer, or someone who helps out with sick animals. And that his passing ought to be widely noted in the cinema enthusiast community, whether you like him or not. And those who didn't even like the idea of his films from the get-go. Funny, I wonder how many people loved the idea of Tarr's films, but didn't ultimately like the films, as opposed to those who disliked the films but thoroughly expected they might after hearing of the premise and especially of the runtime. Those who are on board with the premise and the idea like it, and those who just hate the whole concept, they inevitably don't. Is that profound, or is that just a dumb truism? Let me know whatever you want to let me know in the comment section just below.